Just heard some beautiful sounds there coming from the piano and from Willow. Beautiful. Sing it, sweetie, sing it. Well, hello. It's great to be back in this sanctuary, warmed by your smiles and cheered by your pre-service banter and chatter this morning. I never tire of Sunday mornings, not since my first, nearly 30 years ago in a Unitarian Universalist church where, walking in as a tentative visitor, I experienced an immediate sense of connection and belonging among a gathering of people I didn't know, really. But I nonetheless stood and sang hymns with those folks, shared in meditative silence with them, and listened along with them with rapt attention to the sermon. Throughout that experience, I was shot through with the grounded feeling of being part of a liberal religious community. I thought I would never find anything like it in a congregational setting, in a church setting, or on a Sunday morning. At the time, as an agnostic with 2 small children, I was so grateful for finding that community. But now, 30 years hence, I'm becoming keenly aware that my love of congregational life, particularly that of a Sunday morning, is becoming obsolete. It's said that Americans are not going to church anymore, particularly Protestant ones. And by the way, we are Protestant, radically Protestant. I've been hearing about these trends and reading about it for years now, but last week, one among you sent me an article from the Atlantic Monthly online, an opinion piece on the phenomenon of de-churching. I found compelling some of what the contributor, Jake Meter, had to say. First, he cites a key problem as America's fixation on workism, meaning that Americans are fast losing interest in activities that don't directly enhance their individual advancement or their careers or their achievements. Now, this is somewhat of an opinion, but sociologists have noted for years now that mutuality and common good are waning values in our country, showing a steady decline in volunteerism and civic involvement since the 80s. And on this, Meter says, Americans have adopted a way of life that has left us lonely, anxious, and uncertain of how to live in community with other people. And I agree, at least anecdotally, by what I see, that malaise of loneliness and isolation has been made more acute even by the pandemic isolation of recent years. And there's another problem in trends in American church culture, and that is toward providing a warm and safe space that protects and insulates churchgoers from the problems of the outside world, rather than inspiring the faithful to confront the problems of their larger communities. Now, Meter here he's particularly pointing to Christian denominations, but this may be something that many religious organizations share in. Meter says, and this was one of the best quotes I thought in the article, American churches have too often been content to function as a kind of vaguely spiritual NGO. Vaguely spiritual NGO, an organization of detached individuals who meet together for religious services that inspire them, provide practical life advice, or offer positive emotional experiences. But he says, too often, congregational life has not been a community that through preaching and living bears witness to another way of life, which he says is at the core of true Christianity, is to be out there in the world and being transformed yourself and others. So while Meter's assessment here is broad, many other sages and experts, particularly Parker Palmer, makes the same assertion that we're too insular on Sunday morning. And he is particularly critical of the megachurch model. So if Sunday morning is about detached individuals who meet together for religious services that inspire them, then what you get is not congregations of the faithful, but a gathering of consumers. On the other hand, those who come to a religious institution on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning, if they come in service to the whole, they see their religion as a verb. The faithful attend with the expectation of transforming the world or being personally transformed by their congregational life. Consumers are passive. They aren't looking so much to be changed as to have an experience on Sunday morning. So for Meter, the upshot is this: thriving religious organizations that defy today's dwindling trends grow not because they scale down what is asked of their members, but because they scale up what members provide to one another, namely a community of caring, mutuality, and concern. So by our presentation this morning and what we're going to invite you to do, Judy and I hope that the service will convey the importance of this network of mutuality we have in our fellowship, represented by our display here, the net. A network of mutuality that counters loneliness, isolation, and overconsumption. And you have only to look at your program insert. Can you go ahead and change to the next slide? Look at your program insert, and you can see on the screen all of the ways in which we minister to each other and to our larger community. So all of these centers of activities or programming or what we do here in the congregation, I would like for you to think of these as ministries. You don't have to be ordained to minister. And we don't do these things in isolation. They're all connected in some way. So Judy and I hope that by embodying our gratitude for what we give each other, we leave here today with a deep understanding of how much we enlarge our fellowship with what we give each other in the way of service. And now I'm going to let Judy take over and talk particularly on gratitude, and she'll instruct us on how we're going to be invited to express that this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I start, is there anyone who needs a pen? Because they are down on the shelf of this lectern. And as I talk about gratitude, you may want to jot down under one of the ministry categories something that someone has done, a condition that exists, a way of being that someone demonstrates, something someone has said to you, something you have seen happen. I'm hoping that the quiet time and my words will help bring things and people and events and statements to mind that you would like to see represented on our net. Thank you, Reverend Kathy, for distributing them. There's a wonderful institution that comes out of the University of California at Berkeley. There are many things that come out of University of California at Berkeley, Paul. And one of them is the Greater Good Science Center. And if you have never heard of it, I invite you to Google Greater Good Science Center. It's an amazing organization full of people who are doing research and scholarship into the things that make for the greater good. And from the Greater Good Science Center comes a description of gratitude that ascribes to it a particular important function in communal life and relationships. And this is what they say. Gratitude is important to forming and maintaining social relationships. Research supports what some scholars refer to as the find, remind, and bind function of gratitude. So let's say those three things together. Find, remind, and bind. One more time. Find, remind, and bind. So first, find. By attuning people to the thoughtfulness of others, gratitude helps them find or identify people with whom relationships can be deep and authentic and long-lasting. Under the shelf underneath. If you need a pen, underneath there. So we have the find. It also helps remind people of the goodness of their existing relationships. Sometimes we have to think harder than other times to be reminded of what there is of good around us and among us. And it binds them to their partners and friends and neighbors by making them feel appreciated and encouraging them to uplift and support their relationships. Many, many people around the world practice gratitude like a muscle you have to exercise, something you think you'll get better at if you keep doing it. Some keep gratitude journals. Some list 3 things they're grateful for before they go to sleep. And some start the day with that practice. Just a quick show of hands of anyone who has ever done any of these things. That's wonderful to see. I'm grateful that there are so many of you that understand that practice is a good thing of gratitude. So it's interesting to consider that when we practice gratitude, we are laying a foundation for better relationships. It's like we're putting down the bricks to build the pathway that brings us closer to each other. And we also make room for others to walk that path with us because we're laying down the bricks that make room for other people. By finding things to appreciate, reminding ourselves and others of the ways that our lives are enriched, and binding ourselves to those we appreciate in ever stronger bonds of friendship and love. As a faith that is grounded in love and appreciation and acknowledgement of the worth and dignity of every being. It's very appropriate for Unitarian Universalists to practice gratitude. So whether you already have a solid gratitude practice or you're new to the idea that you could do this every day, today we're going to share an opportunity to practice gratitude. So first, we're taking this time to notice what's wonderful in our lives, especially our community life together, to count our blessings, and think about all the beauty, connection, understanding, stimulation, and support we receive from each other, from UUR's beautiful physical facilities, and for the many worthwhile activities we do together, both here within our walls and out in the community. Once we find our blessings, we remind ourselves and each other how lucky we are by naming some of the blessings we enjoy. So in a little while, we will be inviting you to come forward and add a sea star to the net that's hanging from the frame. And you'll see the labels which correspond to what's on the slide, and I will just briefly read what's on the slide so for the oral learners among us. Sunday morning, spiritual care, membership, religious education, programs and activities, communication, leadership, and teams such as maintenance, planning, and outreach. So think about all those categories and all the many, many individual ministries within those categories. So we'll invite you to pick a sea star from the box and come hang it on the net and identify, if you like, at the mic, identify a particular person or event that you want to acknowledge and appreciate as a blessing. And on Zoom, I encourage you to type a ministry and a name or an event into the chat so Louis can read it aloud.